What's up guys? My name's Mark. Welcome to Fat Cloud TV, brought to you by Vaping Cheap. In this episode, we're going to have a look at how to create DIY e-liquid. Now there's an article on Vaping Cheap already, which the link will be down below. Have a look at the article below. It is quite in depth. This episode is going to be an overview and a video of how to do that in a few short steps. So what are the benefits of making your own e-liquid at home? Well, for starters, it's a lot cheaper than the commercially available e-liquid you buy from your favorite stores. And also you can tweak it to your liking. So I know for me personally, a lot of e-liquids that I have, the flavors, they're good, they're not quite on point. Sometimes, more than often, they're quite sweet or a little bit too sweet, sickly sweet for my liking personally. So the reason I like DIY is that I can hone in on my flavor, my sweetness level, and I can tweak those certain ingredients to make the vape that I am truly happy with and I want to keep vaping all day. Cost, as I mentioned before, well, what can I say? DIY e-liquid, once you're set up, it's super cheap. It's only probably less than $1.50 per 30ml bottle. Even less than that if you're buying in bulk. When you're thinking about the cost of e-liquid from your favorite manufacturers, upwards $20, $30 per bottle. This, it's like not even in the ballpark. It's so much cheaper, so much more enjoyable, and it's a lot of fun. Once you get set up, you can create whatever you want to your liking, to your tastes, very quickly, without too much fuss at all. So what is e-liquid made up of? We've got vegetable glycerine, or VG, to start with. VG is a natural chemical which comes from vegetable oil. VG on its own is smooth and it's kind of sweet. VG is also very thick in viscosity as well, so that's what gives you that thickness when you're looking at an e-liquid. For those that are unable to handle PG because of allergies or other reasons, VG or higher ratio VG juices are definitely the way to go. VG will provide that thick, full vapor. PG is an organic, colorless and odorless chemical compound. PG is quite thin in viscosity and it carries the flavors through our e-liquid. PG is responsible for the throat hit we get, so the sensation we get from smoking and that hitting the back of our throat, PG will deliver that through. So e-liquid higher in PG is going to deliver more of a throat hit and seem more harsh than higher VG ratio flavors. Next we come to flavor concentrates. So they're the additives that give our e-liquid the flavor that we're looking for. So as with cooking, there's a bunch of different flavors we can use and ingredients. Think of additives the same way. So we've got bakery flavors, dessert, cereals, yogurts, custards, beverages, tobaccos, menthols, mints, coolers, sweeteners. The possibility is endless. There's heaps of additives and flavors available from all the DIY retailers around the place, so it's really not hard to get your hands on. Nicotine can also come in various forms. It can come in straight PG, straight VG, PG VG mixes. It comes in usually a very high concentrate of nicotine, so you can get anywhere from 100 milligrams down to say 3, but it's quite cost effective if you buy the higher milligram liquid and then mix that down according to the volume that you're mixing to get your desired level of nicotine. Let's talk about mixing calculators. Mixing calculators are a tool that we use to work out how much of each component needs to go into your recipe. So you can look at online forums within the mixing calculator websites as well. You'll see various recipes. You'll get original recipes and you'll also get clones of recipes that are some of your favorite e-liquids. So if you have a particular e-liquid that you usually buy, you can have a look and see if someone's developed a clone recipe, which means that it's going to be similar, or they've attempted to make the same recipe as that manufacturer, but in a DIY sense. I recommend using eliquidrecipes.com as I find it to be very easy to use. There's a really broad range of recipes on there. You can save your own recipes, you can edit them, you can share them, you can keep them private if you wish. It's also a really great tool because you can have a flavor stash on there. So you add in all the flavors and concentrates that you have, and it'll come up with recipes according to your ingredients that you may not have thought of or that you can try. It'll suggest things that you can make based on what you already have in your flavor stash, which is pretty cool. I like that. The mixing calculator is going to let you know exactly what percentage of what item to put in your mix. So it does all the thinking for you. So you put in your level of nicotine, you put in your PG-VG ratio. We recommend starting at about an 80 VG, 20 PG ratio. 70 to 30 is also good. 80 to 20 is generally a good rule to start with. It'll give you that nice, dense cloud texture, and it'll still have enough PG in there to let your flavors run through pretty easily. The good thing about the mixing calculators as well is that it'll automatically adjust to what volume e-liquid you're making. It'll give you the percentages for each item to put through, and it really just takes out that brain power of thinking about what to do. You just plug everything into the recipe, sit there and follow it, and it's done. So we've got our mixing tools and safety equipment. Now you're going to need some bottles of various sizes. I like to have 30ml bottles, 100ml bottles, 250ml bottles. Anything above that, if you're going to mix in a big bulk or a big batch, is handy as well. You're going to need syringes. I have small syringes, so 1ml to 3ml, up to 10 and 20ml syringes as well, with a blunt needle nose on them as well, so you can draw up the e-liquid from your concentrates quite easily and measure them out, depending on the volume and the ratios that you're mixing. Now you can use scales, you can mix by weight. I personally don't have scales, so I'll talk about that when we go down to the close-up view and show you and explain that a little bit further when we're measuring those out. But for me, I keep it fairly simple, use syringes, and I don't have that need for mixing by weight at this stage. You've got to have some gloves. Okay, so when you're handling nicotine, it's very important, especially in that high milligram ratio, that you don't get it on your skin. Nicotine will absorb through your skin very quickly, and if you're looking at 100 milligram ratios of e-liquid, even a drop or a couple of drops on your skin, that's going to absorb very quickly, give you a nasty headache, make you feel sick. It's not good. I've had nicotine poisoning from not being safe, from not using gloves before, and it's not nice. Not a good feeling. I don't recommend it. Grab some gloves, put them on. It's also going to save you from getting flavor concentrate on your fingers. They're pretty strong and potent, so your hands are going to be smelling for days and days afterwards if you don't wear those gloves. A clean workstation is always good, so somewhere that's pretty easy to mop up, a towel handy, or a tray if you want. You can wear goggles if you're concerned about splashing. Maybe for your first few mixing sessions, I'd recommend maybe being overly cautious and then paring it back once you have experience and you know what you're doing. You can pare that back to only just your gloves. So choosing your first recipe, I would recommend to keep it fairly simple, doing maybe a single flavor mix or a 1 to 2 flavor mix recipe, just so you get the basics down pat and you get used to using your mixing calculator, you get used to using your certain percentages. For the first few times, it's pretty daunting mixing out a big complex recipe and getting all those ratios right to the right percentage, especially if you're doing a small volume to start with. Trying to get those percentages is a hard task. So I'd recommend by starting out with a very simple single flavor recipe or a basic recipe with 1 to 2 ingredients in it. It's definitely better to start with a lower percentage of flavor than you think you need and work your way up from there. It's easier to pare it back and build up later than to go from being too strong backwards. It's also a little bit more forgiving on your taste buds because there's not a flavor overkill to start with. You're kind of building up to that perfect flavor. So start light, work up to it. The materials we're going to need are some rubber gloves, keeping those hands safe as we mentioned before from that nicotine and flavouring, a syringe or a couple of syringes with the blunt drawing tip. Here's our flavour concentrates, so a variety of flavour concentrates you can see in different sizes here. We've got our PG and our VG. And we've got our nicotine. This one's 100 milligram in straight PG. Obviously we need our empty bottle as well. Right, so putting on our rubber gloves, get our empty 30ml bottle. We're going to be making a fat cloud custard that we've set up already on eliquidrecipes.com. You can see the picture here. So the first ingredient calls for 0.9 ml or 32 drops or 3% of nicotine. So as it's 100 milligram straight PG nicotine, to bring it down to a target level of 3 mg for our mix, it's calling for 0.9 ml or 32 drops. I find it easier measuring out nicotine with the syringe just because it's not in a dropper bottle already, and usually I make 30 ml batches and above, so I don't want to be dropping out that much. So I've measured out 0.9 ml in the syringe and I'm going to put it into my empty 30ml bottle. I'm going to put the lid back on the nicotine, put it back in the freezer for safekeeping, because I don't want anyone to get their hands on that that's not me wearing gloves. Right, now we're going to skip over to the concentrates. You can see here that the vanilla custard wants 3 mLs or 105 drops, which is 10% of the entire liquid. Again, seeing as it's quite a large amount, I'm going to measure that out 3 ml in the syringe and add that to the nicotine already in the bottle. As I said, I don't have scales, but you can use scales if you so desire to work out the right percentage. Mixing by weight, basically they call it. You can see I'm adding the sweetener, the cotton candy or ethyl maltol. It's calling for 11 drops. So rather than measure that out with a syringe, I'm just going to count 11 drops and add that to what's already in the bottle. Now the last concentrate is a cinnamon. This cinnamon is very strong, so the recipe is calling for 1 drop. So 1 drop in, it's as simple as that. Now we're going to go back and add our PG. You can see this recipe is calling for 1.78 ml or 63 drops, which works out to be 5.93% of the entire recipe. So again, because it's a fair amount, I'm going to use my syringe to measure that up. I'm going to measure out 1.78 ml of PG. And drop that into the bottle. Now the next one, the VG, is calling for 24 ml, 840 drops, or 80% of the total. Because we're going for a 20% PG, 80% VG ratio, obviously this is adding up to that 80%. Just so you know, the flavours or the concentrates are predominantly made by PG, okay, or made of PG. So that's why there is such a small amount of actual base PG being added. So what I've done with this bottle, instead of measuring out the VG, I've already marked 30 ml total on the bottle. So because I know that's the last thing to add and it's the balance of the ratio, I'm going to pour that in up to the particular line that I've marked on the bottle, knowing that that's going to arrive at 30 ml and it's going to save me from measuring out the specific volume. It's a little bit of a cheat way, but it works for me, and it just saves me a little bit of time in measuring. Alright, so we've got all of our ingredients in the bottle. Next thing to do is give it a really good shake. Alright, shaking it up very vigorously, you're going to start to see those air bubbles appear in the e-liquid. That's a good thing, because it means all the compounds, components, the ingredients are all mixing together, forming those little air bubbles in there. The more air bubbles there are, the better, because it means they're mixing a lot more thoroughly and everything's getting in there, working together and oxidizing. As we've mixed it up, you've seen those bubbles enter the e-liquid. It's mixed up well, but now it needs time to settle and let those flavors and the nicotine, the PG, the VG all intermingle and combine and do their thing. It requires time. We call it steeping. Steeping is the process of letting your DIY e-liquid sit to let it do its magic. It needs time on the shelf for those flavors to settle, combine. The nicotine will oxidize in with all the flavors and the PG and VG to finally settle and make your flavor. Some recipes taste great straight away. We call them shake and vape. They taste great off the bat. You can shake them, pretty much put them in your tank and vape them straight away. Other flavors will really benefit though from steeping. With this particular custard, definitely 2 weeks minimum steep time for those sweeteners and those custards to work together with that nicotine and the PG and VG to reach that optimum flavor. If you let it sit for longer, that's great, but it all depends on how patient you are. The longer you can leave them on the shelf, the better they'll be in the long run. You'll enjoy them more. You'll be more satisfied. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep vaping.
Getting